Speaker.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, can I begin my contribution this afternoon by congratulating you for a recent significant event in your life. We all, I'm sure, wish you well from this point. I also want to offer greetings and best wishes to the House as we start this new year. But more importantly, I want to support the motion moved by the Prime Minister, Right Honourable John Key, and oppose the amendments moved by the Leader of the Opposition. Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister outlined in his very extensive speech the very wide program that the government is currently running. He outlined some of the achievements of the last few years, but overall I think indicated that this is a government that is responsive to the needs of New Zealanders, that does recognise the difficulties that are in people's lives, but also want to encourage New Zealanders toward the sort of prosperity that this country can enjoy on the current policy path that we have. Mr Speaker, there were a number of things that have come through in this afternoon's contributions, and they seem to focus on both the national security but also, sir, on the issues of jobs and housing. And I want to make a couple of comments. Firstly, sir, 217,000 new jobs in the New Zealand economy in the last 5 years under the leadership of the national government. That does not happen because the government has policies. It happens because people are able to respond to the policies a government has. It is the private capital inside our economy that creates the opportunities that provide the jobs. Mr Speaker, the business growth agenda with its 300+ initiatives is about opening markets for New Zealand, is about getting rid of unnecessary red tape from businesses, and creating an environment where the free flow of capital goes into the productive sector to provide those jobs. 80,000 new jobs last year alone. And that's the sort of progress, sir, that we want to see year on year on year that contributes to the overall 3% plus economic growth that we can expect for the near future, that will make a difference to the prosperity of New Zealanders. And I didn't hear one thing from the Leader of the Opposition today that would make us convinced that there is anything more that we should be doing. But I can tell you, if there is more, we'll find it and we'll do it. Mr Speaker, on the issue of the housing, which has been brought up by almost every speaker, I think there are a couple of things that I'll take some adverse stance to Mr Dunn on. His belief that the Resource Management Act simply needs a little bit of change, but no change to purpose, because if you change the purpose, you destroy a whole pile of case law, actually says that the case law now drives what you can do under the Resource Management Act, and that is the very problem that we are trying to solve. Mr Speaker, it must be great if you're a developer hearing the likes of the Labour Party and New Zealand First and the Green Party and now Mr Dunn saying they don't want to see changes to the Resource Management Act, because it is that act that creates the scarcity, the unnecessary scarcity of land for development that ensures that you do have that upward price. We've seen, sir, that there is now a quantifiable gap in the amount of housing that's needed in New Zealand to get to a steady state, to get to a state where places like Auckland will only have to put in about 14,000 to 15,000 houses a year to keep pace with things. That gap is what forces the price, and that gap is largely created by scarcity of land and by RMA rules that ensure that those who are in a position to put big capital into their developments can sell them at a premium. Mr Speaker, we don't mind people making a few quid, but we're not going to have the sort of soft protection that a law like this provides in the guise of it being environmentally friendly. It's utter rubbish, and Mr Dunn, sir, is in the wrong space on this. Mr Speaker, I also found it fascinating that when the Leader of the Opposition started talking about affordable housing today, he started out by telling us about the terrible story of a young couple who've just bought their first home and had to take on a $700,000 mortgage. Well, let me tell you, sir, I did a bit of quick calculating. What that would mean is that that young couple had to have an income between them somewhere in the vicinity of $207,000 a year to be able to afford the payments on a 40% mortgage. So I'm asking him the question, if the Leader of the Opposition is actually telling us that people on joint incomes of $200,000 a year are their target, then he's failed before he starts. Because we have, sir, a program that will start in April of this year, allowing young people to combine their savings by way of KiwiSaver and their own resources at much, much lower levels to buy into housing. What he also says is that because he doesn't want RMA change, that he accepts that there is going to be this massive escalation in first home prices. That, sir, is the sort of thing that you're getting out of the opposition that is never going to take them anywhere, because it won't provide opportunities for young New Zealanders. It's totally the wrong face. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that's come up this afternoon somewhat repeatedly has been the issue of the nation's security. And people will have heard the quite passionate way in which Mr. Key spoke about his reaction, which I think typifies the reaction of most New Zealanders watching on their screens, seeing in their social media, learning about the evils of ISIS, or as they're better named, Daesh. Giving them the title of being an Islamic State is unreasonable to everyone who proclaims the honesty and peace-loving aspects of the Islamic religion. So let's call them Daesh, sir, these evil people who have desire to take over a significant part of the world, if not the whole world. And sir, when we look at their tactics, it is ridiculous for anyone to say that a country like New Zealand would be immune from that type of activity. We are not. And Mr. Speaker, no one can accuse this government of rushing to war, as one or two speakers have suggested today. We have been extremely cautious in the way we've gone about things, and we will continue to be cautious. There has been no decision made about what sort of contribution we might make, but I do want to inform the House this afternoon that I have asked the Chief of Defence Forces to begin some preliminary training of troops who may be asked to assist in a building capacity mission in Iraq. That, sir, is one of the things that we are currently considering, and I want to make it very clear that the request made of the Defence Force today does not preempt any decision the Cabinet might be making about a contribution. It is simply recognising that things are moving very, very fast in this regard, and that we do not want to be caught on the back foot. Mr. Speaker, we have had, since the initial decision, some of our military people in the Middle East. Some have gone into Iraq to have a look under their own reconnaissance at what the situation is. And then, of course, sir, we've had an interaction with the Australians considering what a wider mission might be. But that mission is very much, if it were to be approved, to have a focus on the training of Iraqi troops, on the increasing the capacity of the Iraqi security forces. And to those who say, well, look, that's no good because the Americans spent all that money over those 10 years and it failed. Well, Mr. Speaker, all I'll say to them is this. It failed because there was a corrupt government there that allowed that military security force to fall apart. There is a government there now trying to bring all parties together, and I want to make it absolutely clear and repeat the view of the Prime Minister that it would take an invitation from the legitimate Iraqi government for us to be involved in any capacity building exercise. So, sir, to sum up, no decision made, a lot more work to be done, but, sir, a preparedness should we get caught short, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. Mr. Speaker, I want to reserve my final comments for the Honourable Winston Peters, who keeps doing this dance of the seven veils about perhaps going to stand as the candidate in Northland. Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that if I can quote to you, he said of a former Member of Parliament who was then a list Member of Parliament going to stand in a seat, he said, the member is a carpetbagger who conveniently got his pledge to serve diligently as a list MP and took taxpayers for a ride by not resigning to campaign for the by-election seat. And I want to then say, if Mr. Peters stands by everything he said, when's he going to resign? Well, Mr. Speaker, he won't be resigning because he won't be standing. He didn't stand in Helensville, everyone remembers. 2010, he was out there going to be in the 2000 election challenging the Prime Minister. He was the guy who was going to take him down. And what happened? He whipped off into the corner. Nothing happening there. In 2011, he ended huge amounts of speculation when he kept saying he was going to stand against Simon Bridges in Tauranga. Big loud noise, lots of headlines. Winston's going to do it. What happened? Off the corner again. Off the corner again. And then, of course, the same old act in last election. As soon as Colin Craig was on the picture, Winston was up there standing alongside on the hustings saying, this is the seat I'm going to stand for. I'm going to take Mr Craig down. I'm going to take the National Party down. I'm the man. And what happened? Straight back to the corner. Well, Peter Peroni, let me tell you, sir, you're likely to be the New Zealand First candidate. Good luck to you. See you on the hustings.
Mr Speaker.
I call Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I wish to